Hello and welcome. You can call me Aero, and here today I'm going to be kicking off, hopefully, continued series where I just go over how I do art. So I'll start off with this episode. It's going to be like the equipment and programs I use, kind of the things you need to even before you even start doing the art. And then later episodes, I'll be going into things such as how I think about lines, how I think about sketching, or shading, or colors, and getting into more specifics of that. But starting off, since this is episode 1, a little introduction. I am actually a degree holder. I graduated with a BA in Fine Arts. It's more traditional art than digital, but a lot of things do carry over. A lot of the same design principles, stuff like that. Some people don't need a degree, some people like me, it's like I needed the extra training, and here we are. So this specific video will be going over my computer build, my desk setup, kind of like how I organize things, the drawing tablet I use, because I do primarily have digital art as my preference currently, and also programs that I use, and the reference sites and methods that I use. So to start off, we're going to talk about computer build. So, I am not a computer genius in the slightest. I found this YouTube video, and I'll pull it up right here. I'll put a link, and just so you know, everything I mention and talk about, there will be links and descriptions down there below in the description. And starting off, this is literally the exact computer I have. You can see it in the thumbnail image if you were to go to it. It looks like that picture right there, that playlist. But yeah, so it's a pretty good computer. It's made for gaming, but honestly, I draw more than I game, and it works perfectly fine for either. So, when it comes to having a computer that's good for art, I mean, you can start off very low end. Obviously, if you're ever trying a hobby, start off low end, see if you like it, then start getting more things. If it is something you want to delve into, or if it's something professional, if you know for certain you want to go professional, you might as well get the better end thing starting off. So, this PC, like, I have an external storage. Storage is something you're going to quickly run into if you have a lot of big art files, as well as just the graphics. It needs to handle and process high graphics. I'm not sure the computer terms to do that, but this is the PC I have. If you want to try to do this, I mean, I know nothing, like, I don't even really know, honestly, what RAM is. I just know it's something I had to put in there. I bought the parts, did the thing, it worked. Great, I moved on. So, moving on to the next thing. We have my desk setup. I'll put a picture in the video here, and I will point out that I have two monitors for a double display. Yet again, starting off, you can do perfectly just as fine with one monitor. 2 monitors just makes life so much easier. You can have your music, or if you're watching a video or something while you draw, you can have it on one screen. Or if you're streaming like I am, I have my streaming setup on the screen you cannot see currently, while I have whatever I'm working on my bigger monitor. Some people go extreme and get 3 monitors or 4, and I'm like, I don't need that many, I just need 2. So, yet again, personal preference. Also, make sure I have plenty of space on my desk for me to put, like, if I have a snack or something. I also make sure I have, if you'll notice, there's a little shelf beside my desk that's lower than everything else. It is nowhere near my computer monitor, it's nowhere near my drawing, anything. It is simply that is where I put my drink. And we all know we are all human and we make mistakes, and you never want to spill a drink and have it ruin an expensive piece of technology. So, that's my biggest advice. Designate a drink and food area. And make sure that you are very careful about what's around your computer, especially if you have pets, because we all know cats and dogs, they love to mess with things. So, yeah. Also, you'll notice I actually have a lot of art books directly on that shelf as well, so I have a lot of things I need to look at, inspiration. Later I'll talk about referencing and stuff like that. And then on top of that, I have lots of things that just make me smile. Lots of little odds and ends. I make sure it's a well-lit area. And ideally, the apartment I'm in right now doesn't really have many windows, and there's nowhere I could actually set up my computer. but ideally it would honestly be kind of near a window. You want to make sure you have somewhere that you can look back and forth from screen to natural outside with distance. That actually helps your eyes a lot. Not an eye doctor by any means, but that's what mine told me. And it actually helped a lot with my eye strain when I was working a desk job where I was at a computer all day. Another thing is, if you do art as a job, just keep in mind that some insurance companies will cover having a blue filter put onto your glasses. It does alter the colors you see very slightly, but it greatly reduces eye strain. It filters out that light that's going to give you headaches every time, and it helps you maintain healthy eyesight for longer. Alright, so moving on from desk setup, drawing tablets. It is the primary tool you are going to be using if you're doing any digital art. So, starting off, I'm just going to talk about the different types of tablets, because there are quite a few. So if I just open up Wacom's main page right here, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff. Go to products. And also, just saying, Wacom's not the only brand. There are lots of good brands out there. I'm personally only experienced with Wacom, so I'm just using their website as an example because this is what I'm most familiar with. So you have the most expensive pen computers. They're basically just in a computer, like slam smash straight into a tablet. You don't have to have a computer hooked up to it. It is an all-in-one kit and caboodle display, screen, pen, everything. I personally use pen tablets over here, and I'll get to them. My partner, he actually has a pen display, so he has a tablet. I think he's a Wacom one, but he's just now getting into this, so he just picked the cheapest one. He's not hand-eye coordinated as much as I am, but also he's just starting out on this. So his has a display, so it's like he's drawing directly on there. Works like an iPad or a tablet or all sorts of things. And then I use a pen tablet. You'll see they have a piece of paper clipped to it, but I'll go over here so it looks more realistic and less confusing. So pen tablet, it plugs into your computer. And another thing is, the display also plugs into your computer. It's just a display with the touchscreen. Just happens to show you what you're drawing right there as well. And my partner has to plug his up into his laptop. But going back to this, plug it into a computer, laptop, whatever you got. And there's no display on this, as you can see. It almost looks like just a mouse pad with buttons. This is not the specific brand I use right now, but it is actually what I first started on, was some older model or version of this that they no longer sell. But this is as close as I could find to what I started off on. And I have a few friends who started on this. Perfect for starting off. There's not a whole bunch of fancy stuff. It's simple. You learn. You draw. And yeah, when it comes to the size, you'll see they come in different sizes. I started off in small because there's no display. I personally don't find a big difference in having a bigger one. You have more space for more buttons if it's bigger, which is different if you're getting a higher end one. But starting off, honestly, I'd recommend the small. Yeah. And now, if it has a display, obviously that's going to affect quite a bit based on how big it is. But it's also going to get more pricey the bigger it gets. Kind of back to that, if you're just starting off and you're just seeing if you like digital art, start off with something like this, or the Wacom one, or some other brand or tablet. Or if you're crazy like my sister and you just only draw on your cell phone, she does that, and I don't understand how, but some people can get away with that as well. So, now the specific tablet that I use, pull it up real quick. I use the Intuos Pro. This is what I'm currently using. Mine died, and then a good friend of mine actually helped me out a lot, and I was able to get a new tablet. And I have the medium because I do like having that little extra arm space. It allows me for more movement. It has express keys. It's got Bluetooth capability, even though I never use it. And yeah, this is useful. I've seen some people plug this up to their TV, like connect it to a computer that they use a large TV or even projector as the display. That's kind of crazy. It's cool, but crazy. I just use my computer. But yeah, the express buttons and keys are useful because like I have one that's the undo button, so I don't have to reach all the way forward, move the mouse, or I have to click the button. I just click this one button and it works. And you can also get versions now, I guess, where you has like a piece of paper on top, and as you draw on the paper, it also puts it onto the screen, I think? I'm not 100% sure on these. I'm just now seeing these, and I'm not sure what they are. But yeah, lots of options, lots of brands. Don't forget, Wacom's not the only brand. It's just the one I've happened to use twice in a row now. And the one I've had has held up really well. I draw multiple hours, usually almost every day. Gets lots of wear and tear. Works perfectly fine. Alright, so moving on to programs. Starting off, I used Photoshop. Photoshop's what I used when I started doing digital art in elementary school. I was very fortunate and lucky to start off at a really young age because my mom's computer happened to have Photoshop. She did like the church's bulletins and stuff like that, so it was on there and I got to use it. I played around with it a bunch, kind of got the basics. Didn't have a tablet, so I was just messing around with the mouse or editing photos. Then middle school, I got more into the actual drawing. My mom bought probably not gonna lie, one of the worst drawing tablets, but it worked. It allowed me to do lines. It was not pressure sensitive, so it did not increase or decrease the line weight or anything like that. But it was like a step past a mouse. It's like a baby step. Baby step is still a step. So, and I was still very appreciative I got that. Mom, if you see this, not dissing the Christmas gift. I'm just saying, it was, relatively speaking, a pretty bad tablet, but it was a tablet. And then moving on, high school, I really got into using Photoshop at drawing. I got a Wacom tablet, went really well. And then when I got to college, I actually stopped using Photoshop. And the reason is because it went to subscription. Kind of frustrates me how Adobe has gone fully into this subscription-based platform and really blocks a lot of people out from even being accessible. So I dropped that as soon as they did that. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm trying to go to school. That's expensive. So I tried using SidePaint. If you've researched art programs, it's probably come up. It works pretty good. It's kind of hard to get because it is a Japanese program, so you have to like get currency change online and buy it. And there's a few fake websites, and it's confusing and weird, but it is a pretty decent program. I used that for like a month or two, and then I found Clip Studio. Clip Studio is like my baby. This is Clip Studio. I love it so much. I have been using it since basically the beginning of freshman year, like a couple months in when I first used it. This is the website. For me, it always pops up in Japanese. So it might look like this for you when you first go into it. Just note the language things right here. And also, should have said this at the beginning, I'm not sponsored by any of this stuff. I'm just going over what I personally use and my preferences. If you draw on an iPad and your favorite thing's Procreate, cool. If you use something else, awesome. Use what you're comfortable with. And my absolute favorite is Clip Studio Paint. I honestly find it a lot easier to use than Photoshop. It has never crashed on me. I've been using this program for about 5, maybe 6 years. Never crashed on me. I've never had issues loading stuff, never had issues saving stuff. It just works really well. And it is honestly probably the biggest threat to Photoshop's reign on the digital art world. Because you can do all sorts of stuff. You can animate in it, you can do web books, you can do all sorts of stuff. And also, if you're like me and you hoard brushes, all Photoshop brushes are compatible with Clip Studio Paint. You just import them and ta-da, your brushes. They're there. So, works really well. No complaints, honestly, 0 complaints. I just love this program, and they do still roll out updates. It is a one-time purchase for PC, not sure about other platforms, because they do have a mobile Clip Studio Paint, which is really interesting, but yeah, it's a one-time purchase. I love it. They have half-off sales a lot. Their updates have amazing features that just add every time. Like, there's an automatic art recording feature where it just records a time lapse of your art as you draw it, and it's amazing. So back to the video. Less of me just totally going crazy over Clip Studio Paint. It is the one thing that any of people I know in digital art that know nothing about it, I'm like, you must know about this. But yeah. So probably the longest part of this video is going to be the reference sites. And to kick off this discussion, I am going to start off with this. Difference between referencing, copying, and tracing. I will link to this. It's just a really good explanation, description of the differences. The only thing I would like to add to this discussion is that when it comes to tracing and copying, it is a very commonly used practice and study. But studying is not something you just put online or publish or anything. Studying is just studying. It's almost the same for, like, if you're studying for a math test. You're going to practice the same math problems and scenarios over and over and over. It might even be the same problem over and over, just given a different time span. But you're not going to go around and post your study notes where you copied the math questions out of the math book. You're not going to post those online as, like, your mathematical thesis or something. You're just using it to learn. Simply study. You're not going to go around and post it up online. You're not going to put it on Twitter. And that's honestly what tracing and copying can be used in a positive way. Sadly, a lot of people just copy and trace and claim it as their own, which is a violation of copyright, and so on and so forth. And then, just a quick breakdown of reference. Reference is just alluding to, like, you think of it. You're taking in, like, one specific detail and applying it elsewhere, or you're learning various things. Another thing, you can reference poses, you can reference color schemes, and one of my biggest pet peeves is you cannot claim a pose or art, like a color scheme. Now, it can get to the point where it is copying, like line for line for a pose, but nobody can claim a pose. You can recreate a pose with your own body. They can't copyright that. Nobody can. But, and I believe this person even does touch on that too. Like, talking about how you can't copy body poses and stuff like that. Yeah, like, here are good examples of pose, since there are some who try to claim it. You can't. You can't. It's not how that works. But if they draw a similar character in a similar pose, that might be more of a gray area. Like, okay, you might actually be copying and not just referencing or studying or whatever. But yeah. So, I use quite a few sites for references. If you don't reference, you don't study, then you're greatly going to basically just shoot yourself in the foot in the long term. For you to create images that look like artwork, like, take this background for instance. Like, I drew this, and the skull, I used a reference. For the bottom jaw, I used a reference. For just the telephone poles even, I used a reference. I looked at, like, heavy stroke, what's it called? Like, palette knife paintings for some of the background. Like, I look at that. Like, references are so vital. For the gold leaf look, I used references. I mean, if you don't use references, it's really going to hurt your growth and learning process. So, starting on one of my absolute favorite sites I use for reference is Sketchpad. It's actually a 3D model website. Most people don't really ever think of this. One of my college professors gave me this idea, and I was like, this is amazing. So, like, this is my profile. I don't have many collections. I mainly just subscribe to this one. And yeah, so you have 3D models that you can move and study. Heads up, some of these are copyright, so you can't just look at it and draw what you see. Some are common use, and you can use, like, you can straight up just look at it, copy it, line for line, just visually. Obviously 2D is different than 3D, and you're not running any troubles, but there's different rules for each one. Just make sure you do check that on each individual item. But let's say, for example, I wanted to do this. I know it's kind of similar to my background, so that's why I clicked on it. What's cool is you can go on here, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, and you can rotate it, which is perfect for trying to get angles of things if it's a static. And you'll see other people have collections. There's lots of bones on here, which can also be useful for drawing live animals, or if you like drawing skulls. This is the most beautiful website for you. You get different angles. You can also make it full screen. I won't, just because I'm just going through this quickly. But when it comes to the license, this is important. You'll want to check this. You can click learn more, and then it gives you pretty easy to read breakdowns. Like, you're able to share and adapt, reform, transform, even commercially. And yeah, now what's pretty cool on here, the site specifically, is there is a way to filter that. So you want to search something. I'm not going to search anything because, heads up, there's lots of historical statues and imagery on here, so there might be lots of naked bodies. It is what it is. If that is something you don't want to see, then maybe you won't want to use this website, just willy-nilly searching things. But, back to the search, you can click licenses right here, and you hover over it, it will tell you what it is really simply, and you can click and filter it. If you use 3D modeling programs, there are downloadable ones, but that's more so into 3D modeling itself and editing them, and I'm doing nothing about that. So back to the models I use, one thing I'll do is I'll actually take screenshots to use as my reference in my Clip Studio Paint program. So Clip Studio Paint over here has a subview, which is where you can put images. This I got from Sketchpad, that I got from Sketchpad, that I got from Sketchpad. I mean, I can rotate the object. This one is the same as that, just different angles. I was just doing generic canine studies where I'm just practicing different angles, poses, skulls, living creatures. So it's really useful. So moving on to some other sites that I use. Probably the easiest to use, most common site, social media platforms. So if you don't already, use the content that you follow as reference, as inspiration, and as idea gathering. I know on Twitter, anytime I come across artwork that catches my eye and I'm like, I absolutely love this, or if I see something really interesting, it piques my interest, I'll put it on here. And I'll study it. Like, I'll look at it and think through, like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, this artwork. I absolutely love this artist, by the way. And it's like, I can study the line work, I can study the background, I can be like, okay, I really like how the sun's blurred, and I can think through some of those in the future whenever I'm doing artwork. Or if I'm just really struggling to come up with any type of inspiration, I can scroll through, and then usually by the end of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I can make art again. And also I'll say like tutorials and stuff I find that are really useful. You can do this on Twitter. I mean, Pinterest isn't obvious. There's Tumblr, all sorts of websites. Go crazy, save art. If you go to a art studio, almost always you'll see printed out pictures of artwork all over the place. And those are their references or inspiration. Very, very common practice. And just because you save something, like, I don't know why, but I've met people that, like, they feel guilty for looking at people's artwork before they draw, and I'm like, but you're not drawing that character doing that. You're just looking at it and going, I really like how the paw goes, or I really like the fur on this, or I really like the eye, and you just think through those as you create artwork. Like, maybe I want more angular eyes. Like, I notice that's a common theme in art I like. Maybe that's something I should think more about, is instead of a more round eye, maybe try other shapes. I mean, it's one of the many ways that you can interpret art. Another common thing I love to use would have to be Unsplash. Unsplash is freely usable images posted by content creators from all over the place. Just go on here, search what you want, and you have images you can use. So, like, I can look at this and be like, wow, I really like the colors. I can save that image and use those colors as reference, or these leaves, or the way the light hits the rocks, this landscape color, and all sorts of things. Also good for animals. There's lots of animal and bug photography that you can use as a reference. And yeah, it's basically like Sketchpad, but instead of 3D models, it's photos. I do suggest making a profile on sites like these, because it does help contribute to that website. And yeah, that's about it for the referencing. All in all, just remember, digital art is about learning and taking information that you see and have gathered via memory, direct reference, or idea gathering, and then translating it into a visual form. So taking ideas and just running with it. Now, when it comes to programs and computers, like, there are some limitations based on whatever items you use, but really, as long as you have a tablet, as long as you have a art program, and I can guarantee there are free art programs out there that you could probably get started on, just go for it. Use free trials, see if you like it. If you like it, then start getting more stuff associated with it. But I mean, reference sites, those are all free. You can already start on those principles of referencing and studying. And books, I almost forgot, books can be so useful. If there's a show you happen to watch and you just love the art style, everything about it just reaches out to you, 9 times out of 10 that show probably has either an art book or those creators are on Twitter. I follow countless Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, DreamWorks, Pixar content creators because I love their art. Like, they're skilled artists and it shows, and I love that. Like, I have a book on Steven Universe, I have an art book on Spyro, an art book on Invader Zim. All 3 amazing games and shows. So, don't forget, even physical books can lend a very hefty teaching hand, and that applies to traditional art too, not just digital. It is very true of any form of media that you're creating. Don't forget to look at others that are creating similar things to you. But all in all, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found it mildly useful. I hope it's not just me ranting a bunch. And yeah, hope you'll follow, subscribe, like, all that good stuff, so that way you can be informed on when I post the next episode of the series. And yeah, I'll catch you later.